whatever my position will be, it shall be, and not shall it depend on human influence or gifts, as denoted by the shape of the reading mark. So the interesting thing here is that, again, we separate it out as a thought in and of itself. So normally we'd say velo tamar, and you shouldn't say. That's not what we've said here at all. It's saying Avram's position, what Avram does in the world, is not going to be influenced by having these possessions with him. So he's not talking about what they're going to say at all, saying what the possessions are going to do to him. And again, that's probably unique to this parish. Tomar, you shall say, with the katon, if I am prosperous, also in later situations, I like to prevent, if you shall say that you have contributed to my success, as suggested by the bipartite shape of the reading mark, with the two-part katon, so that if later on Avram has a success, his success will be less because what was supposed to be theirs is what influenced his position later on. So if Avram grows to another level later on, then they're going to be claiming part of the credit. Yeah. So he wants completely to separate out any future credit that he gets to be tied to them in any way. Ani, number 8, with a tzipcha, backwards focused and pausing slightly afterwards. No human shall dare to say, I was essential or participated in Avram's affluence, as expressed by the reverse inclination of the directional reading mark. So this is coming back to what they're going to say, and again, it's just re-emphasizing the point I think we made on the last word. He'esharti, I made prosperous, with the mercha, lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving forward into what's going to go afterwards. It should not be said by anybody, and by anybody is because of the connection of the mercha, with my gifts or support from Abraham, I made prosperous his undertakings, I suppose that should be together, undertakings and contributed to his welfare, not undertakings and. Undertakings and contributed to his welfare, as specified by the directional shape of the reading mark. So again, this is going to move forward into what the next phrase is, which is et Avram, with Avram, number 10, with the stabilizing sof pasuk. It will be obvious to everybody that only heavenly supervision is present with Avram, and because of that, he shall not incur failure. So, by tying his fate to what was not meant to be his, he risks not being him anymore. And you know, we take for granted the concept of, you know, what I have is mine. And historically, that just was not always true. What belonged to the king or the Lord belonged to the king or the Lord, and just because it was, you know, your house, it was on the Lord's land, and your fork in your house was the Lord's fork, not yours. So here we're learning an economic lesson as a moral lesson, that personal property rights are in fact a temporary influence that you are given over an item by divine will, because it is both something that you will use or have the potential with your free will to use to its best influence, and something that possession can come to its highest potential by being used by you in the situation where you are given mastery over it. So very deep lesson from a rather mundane thing. No, I don't want anything that you're going to give me. Sounds like he's almost dissing them. Sounds like he's putting them down. I don't want your stuff. It's not what he's saying at all. And he's also not saying, no, you can keep your stuff. Okay, this was really yours, and I liberated it, and you can keep it. He's not being magnanimous that way. He truly is teaching them a philosophical lesson by not accepting this. So I want you to read the sentence in its entirety and to sort of say that that's not what he said and that's not what he said. This is what he's saying, and it truly comes out when we apply the lessons that we learn with this perush as to what exactly is going on here. And I don't think it comes out with the same point of emphasis in any other interpretation of just reading through that sentence. Imichut v'yad sroch na'al v'imekach mikol asher lach v'lo tomar ani asharti et Avram. We are on the bottom of page 73 on the left-hand column. Biladai, beyond me, with the rivi'i. So this is going to have a note with pause and breadth to it. The greatness of Avram found its perfection in his modesty. He ascribed his accomplishments as having occurred beyond me, without any recognition for himself, as indicated by the broad meaning of the reading mark. So, again, this is going to sort of stand alone as a conceptual word. Everything that's going to happen here is beyond what I actually did. And we have a second note on this word, or a second comment about this word. The same expression is also found in connection with the success of Yosef at the start of his career in Egypt. He too refuses any credit for his personality. So when Joseph is asked to interpret Pharaoh's dream, it says Biladai. He uses exactly the same words. That this is not from me. This is coming from divine source. Rak, only, with the mapach. So this is going to take what we said before and focus it to a more narrow point. Only what was outside his personal interests should be considered independently, because he could not speak about legitimate claims of others, as shown by the shape of the reading mark. So Avram is going to say that all of these things are beyond my capacity to take possession of, because they simply were not meant for me. But when we talk about others, like we're going to in this sentence, we're going to give them their ability to say whether they want to take possession or not. Asher, what? With a munach. So this is separated from the word before and moving forward. Number 3, the expenses which were incurred by the hired participants, that what shall be remunerated to them to satisfy their lawful demands, as stressed by the shape of the reading mark. So again, Avram is saying, well, this is who I am, but I'm not going to speak for others, because they might have other ways of dealing with things in the world. Achlu, again, a separation from the word before with the munach, and moving forward into what's going to go afterwards. 8, number 4. 8 is number 4. They deserve to be paid for the food which they ate while away from home, as denoted by the shape of the reading mark. So here I want to notice that we're not saying what they ate, but they deserve to be compensated for what they might have bought to eat. So it's not just, the possessions were taken from the city. So you figure there was grain and fruit and vegetables and so on. It was an agricultural land. It was the best agricultural land that there was. So we figure, okay, we're talking about what they actually ate. But no, we're saying it doesn't matter that whether they ate from the possessions of that city. It can be what they ate on the way that they had to buy from somebody else or so on. So it was, the sandwich that they brought from home, they deserve to be paid for that as well. The provisions that they brought to the war, not just what they might have eaten from the spoils of war.
So how do you get that?
So how is that? How is that derived here? I think conceptually, it's more speaking about one of the sort of prime directives that Avram gives to everybody who is under his influence. Mm-hmm. All of his slaves, and what he chides Lot over is you don't take from you don't use somebody else's stuff. Mm-hmm. You don't let your sheep graze on somebody else's field. So he's saying what they ate. Well, of course they didn't touch the spoils of war yet, because we haven't decided if those are theirs yet. So we're saying the food that they brought from home or had to buy on the way, whatever provisions they made to get to the point where they won the battle, those are separate from what are in fact the spoils of war. So I think this is more in character with what we would expect Avram to have insisted on people under his influence to do. Mm-hmm. So again, what they ate speaks about Avram. I think that's an astute point that your father put in. That they ate things from home, not ate things that, from the barrel of stuff that they managed to liberate. Hane'arim, the boys, with a two-part katon. Not only were the boys of the campaign properly fed, but they also risked their lives, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So again, the katon has two parts, and we're saying they deserve credit for not only the expenses that they laid out, but the fact that they risked life and limb to participate in the battle. The chelek, and a part with two pashtaot on it. Number 6, due to other disbursement and a part of the personnel was recruited from the association, they too might be entitled to some compensation, as suggested by the double directional reading, the shape of the related reading mark. So here we might say, well, there might be others who were supporting characters, and they might, deserve some compensation for their time and efforts and whatever they laid out. Ha'anashim, of the men, again with a two-part katon to it. Those of the men who belonged to the alliance were also beyond his exclusive jurisdiction. Therefore, Avram should not represent their claims, as expressed by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. I'm not sure what's two-part about that, other than their interest and Avram's interest. Asher, that, with a mercha, lightly connected to what's come from before, but moving us forward into what goes afterwards. These people that, accompanied by joining the expedition, were prepared to give rescue if required, as specified by the directional shape of the reading mark. So we're sort of talking about people who are the supports, the supporting troops, though, rather than the actual people who participated in the battle. So he's saying not only are those people who were directly involved to be compensated, but those people who were peripherally involved, they might also have a claim. So this is an accounting. Like we see with Moshe and the Mishkan and so on, that accounting is very stringent when you want to prove that you're moral. And here, with each word, we're seeing that Avram is including other people to make sure that he didn't trample on somebody else's rights, or he didn't take something from somebody else that they might have deserved or might want to lay a claim to. Asher, number 8, that the people that accompanied. So again, number 9, halchu, with a tipcha, closing the thought and pausing slightly afterwards. They walked to support my plans and tried to make my efforts successful, as illustrated by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. And again, I'm not sure that this has anything higher to say. Et with me, with the stabilizing et nachta, being together with me, all have equally endangered their lives to bring about a common triumph, as conveyed by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. Again, anybody who is fighting against a superpower, with the probable outcome being that you're going to lose. So anybody who had been even loosely tied to that might have been rounded up afterwards and summarily punished. So anybody who even was peripherally involved in support also deserves danger pay. But ultimately, the stability there is that they did see that this was a higher calling. And again, that's the concept of et nachta, something that's stable with something a little bit higher in it. Aner, with pashta, so a slight amount of emphasis and moving forward into what's going to go on afterwards, number 11. Thus did Aner lead his men in accordance with the mutual treaty to assist one another in cases of crisis or emergency, as demonstrated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So Aner helping the others, Eshkol, with a munach separated out from what's come from before, but moving forward into what's going to go afterwards. Behind him was Eshkol, who was in command of his forces, as depicted by the shape of the reading mark. So Eshkol, who is sitting behind all of his troops and telling them to go to war. Mamreh, and with a katon, a two-part note, and Mamreh, along with his personnel, had joined the ranks of the participants as signified by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So again, two parts because both him and his men. Haim, they, with a tipcha, backwards focused and pausing slightly afterwards. All were equal partners in the same drive, and they deserve the same credit as portrayed by the reverse inclination of the directional reading mark. So all of those who we said before, all of them, Yikhu, Mercha, lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving us forward into what's going to go afterwards. Those participants, in addition to Avram's own army, shall take their rewards in accordance with their efforts, as emphasized by the directional shape of the reading mark. So all of those people, and the people who we didn't mention, Avram's Hanarim, I guess, or Avram's troops, Yikhu, Chalkam, the Sof Pasuk, stabilizing influence on their part, number 16. Their part of the reward shall be consistent with their contribution. So, Chelek, a part that you've divided something up. Here he's saying the amount that they get is commensurate with the amount of effort or risk that they put in. So as we read through the sentence, we're going to notice that the word biladai, the word that's talking about Avram and all of this being sort of separate from him, that's going to sit by itself. Rak asher achlu hanarim, that's the people who were connected to Avram. So that's the first group. V'chelek ha'anashim, and what belongs to the important people. Asher halchu, that were even in supporting roles. Iti, again, Avram is going to stand alone. Aner, Eshkol, Mamre, those three, the major allies. Haim, we're going to go back and we're going to focus on what they get. And Yikhu Chalkam, the last phrase is going to talk about everybody up until now, so it's going to be separated out. Biladai rak asher achlu hanarim vechelek ha'anashim asher halchu iti aner eshkol umamrei haim yikhu chalkam. I just want to go back to number 2 for a minute. Because I wrongly said that this was a mapach and this is a yativ. The two notes look exactly alike, but a yativ has a position of itself. It always goes before the first vowel of the word, of the first letter, and it is a pausing note, not a connecting note. Whereas a mapach is a connecting note. So we have to reread that comment. Number 2, only what was outside his personal interest should be considered independently, because he could not speak about legitimate claims of others, as shown by the shape of the reading mark. So this is focusing both what they deserved, but also focusing Avram's statement that everything belonged to God and had to be determined by what he said. No, these other people might have claims that they want to stand behind, and Avram was not going to abrogate those. He wasn't going to cancel those. So that's why it's that backwards focused note that says, you know, I said something, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I don't want to be the one who dispossesses somebody else either. And I think maybe that's where we're going to stop for the evening.
Yeah. Actually, for Enchanted Workers, 10 p.m. here. Go ahead.